Here we are again, Mike Martz and Jim Thomas, talking football on Claves Online. Mike, another exciting week in the football world. We've had no shortage of storylines or news developments. Of course, one of the big things this week were all the quarterback injuries in the league. The Browns lost Deshaun Watson to a torn
Right.
Achilles. Uh, Even his backup, Dorian Thompson Robinson, excuse me, he came in and he had a finger injury, and so he was replaced by Jameis Winston, who I guess is starting this week. The Raiders lost Aiden O'Connell with a broken thumb. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Of course, Jaden Daniels, first quarter rib injury for the Commanders, and he's week to week. The Dolphins has started the last 3 games, but Tyler Huntley, but it looks like Tua will be back anyway. Huntley left the Indy game with a shoulder injury, and
Right.
nothing that happened on the football field. Andy Dalton's driving with the family and the dogs Tuesday. He has a car accident. He injures his right thumb, and this is Tuesday, and he's out. Bryce Young is going to get back in the lineup, so pretty crazy stuff.
It'll be interesting to see what Bryce does. I've had that happen with quarterbacks in the past where we really felt like they're going to be good players and they just don't do it. And they sit for a while and they kind of hit rock bottom. They come back and they catch fire. Hopefully that's what happens with Bryce because I know he's a good player. It's in there someplace. Hopefully he gets it going.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. How do you get a backup ready?
They've just got to be there mentally and emotionally. It's an emotional thing for them. There's so much is expected out of a young guy like that, and this stress just wears them down. They just can't do it. And finally, when they sit for a while, they get kind of angry, and that's always been my thing with these quarterbacks is the guys that have been kicked around and feel like they got something to prove. Those are guys are the kind of guys you want. He might be there right now. Hopefully, being down there and having to watch is humbling for him, and it's maturing. That's for sure. Hopefully, he does it now.
It looks like there's a chance Tua uh, Tagovailoa will be back for Miami. What are you expecting from him?
Oh, same stuff. It's instant energy to that group. I mean, he's the engine that drives that car. Everything that he does, the ball comes out so fast because he does not have a strong arm, probably the weakest arm in the league, but that's okay. The ball comes out so early. He's so accurate and anticipates throws so well. It helps the offensive line immensely. And I think that just having him in the huddle before they even throw a pass is going to be some juice to them, to that football team. That'll be big. They'll
Yeah,
respond.
and I think of all the teams so far that have lost quarterbacks, Miami just didn't handle it very well. They kind of fell apart without him. Any thoughts on that?
That's the biggest thing, Jim, in the league is, I always felt this way that you got to have two basically starters or a young guy that you think can be a starter behind. And a couple of teams does what they just figured that that's a throwaway. Just find somebody just in case to get you out of a game. Well, that doesn't, happened to us in the NFC Championship with the Chicago Bears. We didn't have a good one,
Yeah.
Actually a Super Bowl. So, and that's what happened to them. They just didn't have a backup that was capable of keeping them at the same level they were. Plus, they had some injuries to the running backs at that time too when he went out.
Yeah. Yeah. We had some bad quarterback play in week 7. Gardner Minshew for the Raiders. He replaced O'Connell. This is not even a full game. Again, he replaced the injured Aiden O'Connell. 3 interceptions. He had a lost fumble return for a touchdown. He has 10 turnovers this season. Minshew tied for the league high. Kirk Cousins. Now, I didn't see the game, but he had 2 interceptions and lost a fumble in that loss to the Seahawks. That fumble was returned for a clinching touchdown. What did you think of Aaron Rodgers' play? He had a couple interceptions. It looks like he's not. He used to be so good making plays on the move. It looks like that element of his game isn't really that that good? Do you think that's a holdover from Achilles or the fact that he's 40 years old?
I thought he was excellent. I mean, he didn't miss anything. He's not. He doesn't have his mobility.
Hmm.
You know, he used to be a real threat to run. Now he's got to be 20 pounds lighter than what he used to be. He's
Really?
oh,
Okay.
he's very light.
Hmm.
He made some throws down there where guys are supposed to be. They weren't there, you know, and that's what a great quarterback does. You know, they've got a place where they expect that guy to be. And if you put new receivers in Kansas City, the same thing's going to happen.
Hmm.
It's going to be a misfire. You have to, well, what's wrong with the quarterback? There's nothing wrong with Rodgers.
Okay.
He's playing exceptionally well. He's still spinning that ball like nobody's business. I mean, he can put it wherever he wants. They just got now that they've got obviously Devontae Adams and he's got two receivers at Lazard with that he's with at the Packers. I think both the last two games that they've played, they should have won.
Yeah.
They had some key mistakes. One ball bounces off the chest here this last week, and just stupid stuff happened to them. So I think this is a team that's gonna. It's a little bit like Cincinnati. It's a team that's getting ready to just kind of break out a little bit. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the marquee games, the Chiefs and the 49ers from week 7. Brock Purdy threw 3 interceptions, and Patrick Mahomes 2 interceptions. Mahomes actually has this is just a mind-boggling stat. He actually has 8 interceptions and just 6 touchdowns. It's hard to imagine him with more interceptions than touchdowns. And he's had back-to-back games with no touchdown passes, but they're still winning. I mean, they're the last unbeaten team now that Minnesota's lost. What do you think of Mahomes' play?
Well, they've changed how they play. There's something going on with him because I've said this all year long. He's not nearly as accurate as he's always been.
Mm-hmm,
He
mm-hmm.
misses throws that I've never seen him miss before, and nobody says anything about it. I mean, misses them big. I've
Yeah,
never seen that, and
yeah,
I don't know what's going on with the receiver deal or what's going on, but I mean, he just misses basic throws, and that's never been his deal. So he's not playing nearly as well as he has. They geared everything back and taken it away from the passing game. Really tried to win games on defense, rush the football, and get that ball out quickly on screens and shorter passes. That deep ball that they've been so known for over the years is not really there.
yeah, yeah. No, very interesting. They have run the ball very, very well lately. And how about Purdy? It had to be one of his worst games, I would say.
Well, that happens. I mean, that happens. You're against a team that's real good, and you don't have all your bullets,
Mm-hmm,
and they're not real good at tackle. Their offensive tackle right now, they're not
mm-hmm.
playing very well. They're not protecting him as well. But he's same thing. You're trying to do stuff just to stay in games or catch up, and you make throws you probably shouldn't make, and he gets hit, the ball goes in the air, those kinds of things. But Brock Purdy, I would never worry about Brock Purdy. He's really a good player.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and they've had obviously tons of injuries, and now they lose Brandon Ayuk, the very talented wide receiver,
Right. Exactly.
to an injury. He's out for the season, but obviously there was some very good and great quarterback play over the weekend. Is there a player in the league playing any better than Jared Goff of Detroit? His last 3 games, he's thrown almost as many touchdown passes, 7, as he's had incompletions, 10. He's had only 10 incompletions in the last 3 games.
Well, I don't think he's thrown more than 22 passes in any of those games, has he? Maybe.
Uh, well, he's 58 of 68, so but not a ton of passes. So what is that? That's like 20, about 23 a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're throwing it like that, you're winning.
Mm-hmm.
You're winning with a high percentage, and the yards per attempt is way up there. They get control of the game. They've got that two-headed snake in the running game with a great offensive line, and and now they've got corners that can cover, and they're just a different team. They're just tough now. Even with Hutchinson out, they're
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely. I think they're the best team in the league right now. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's a hard the way that Baltimore's come up with Henry,
Mm-hmm.
the addition, and then all of a sudden their defense is starting to look like they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those are the two best bets, in the league right now, AFC and NFC, those two teams.
That would be an interesting Super Bowl. We talked about this last year when Talking Football was on radio on KFNS, but uh, you worked out Jared Goff coming out of college. Did the was it the agent that asked you to take a look at him? Is that how that worked out? And what do you recall about that workout?
Well, Ted Tolmer's son, Bruce, was an agent. And I've known Bruce since he was just got out of law school. And he'd called me and asked me, as Carson Wentz and as Jared Goff, the two of them worked them both out together with some receivers there in Orange County, and just come in and talk to him about what's going to be like going into the league and just what I thought of him, He was very quiet, very, very quiet, kind of stoic. Usually I can get him to laugh a little bit and loosen up. No, he was business, all business.
Yeah.
Now, Wentz was just the opposite, real jovial, real gregarious and happy, and different guys, but they're both so talented. I mean, you watch both of them throw the football, the skill was just overwhelming for both of them.
Yeah, yeah.
I just felt Jared Goff had a little bit of a windup. They reduced it a little bit. He doesn't have to, that big motion he's got. They can make him a little bit more compact if he just concentrates on it. But so the ball comes out a little bit quicker. But at this point, I wouldn't touch him.
One thing I've noticed with Goff this season over previous years, I always thought, and all quarterbacks have trouble with pressure to a degree. I mean, it makes it more difficult when they're pressured, be it blitz or just regular pass rush. And I thought he early in his career he looked antsy in the pocket, but boy, watching him this year, he just looks real firm. He just hangs in there and throws the ball.
So here's what that's all about, and you can see it's about quarterbacks in general, Jim. If you get a quarterback that's antsy in the pocket, there's a couple things going on, but the primary deal is they're not sure where the ball should go.
Okay.
They're not sure where that guy's going to win on the route, so they won't turn it loose, or they're not sure which guy to. They're not real clear about things. And when you get a system where this happens, ball's got to go there right now. You just get it out there. Then it's defined for them. They get back and they'll let it go. The other thing is just the courage to stand in the pocket, knowing you're going to get splattered, and just make that throw. Mm-hmm. Those two things. So the courage and then the knowledge and the conviction. Okay, this is what's got to happen. I got this guy. He's going to win. I'm going to throw it out here. I know he's going to win one-on-one. Just let it go. And when that starts happening, we have good people outside. You're protected. The blitz is coming. You just stand in there and make that throw. Now he's getting hit occasionally too. He's just impervious to it.
It's amazing. It's like he doesn't even. I don't want to say he doesn't see the pass rush coming, but it's just you're right. He's like oblivious to it. It's been pretty amazing to watch. We had a couple of big homecoming, and they were both games, in-your-face games. Saquon Barkley returns for Philly, and against his old team, the New York Giants. He played, I think, his first 6 seasons with the G-Men. 176 yards rushing and a touchdown in a 28-3 win for Philadelphia. He said driving up to the stadium and getting out of the bus, fans, the Giants fans, not taking his departure very well, were burning his jersey. And then the other one, of course, we talked about this a little bit last week. Sean Payton, after 16 seasons in New Orleans, returns with Denver and just puts a whooping on the Saints, 33-10. Barkley's been one of the biggest pickups, offseason pickups in the league, wouldn't you say? Especially for running backs. Maybe Derrick Henry was even bigger, but Barkley's helped save the bacon a little bit for the Eagles.
No, there's no question. There's no question about it. The offensive line has not been playing well. They're talented, but they haven't been playing well. And all of a sudden they get him going, and they got their stuff together now.
Yeah.
He understands their scheme of doing things in the running game, because everybody's a little bit different, and it's imperative that they're on the same page with the offensive line, where the balls should be starting and reading the linebackers and all that good stuff. And that takes a little while. You just don't do that in the first game. It takes a few games to get used to that. Same thing with Marshall. You remember when Marshall came to us, the first few games, he wasn't really involved much in the running game.
Right.
We had to learn, what we were doing and what we were trying to do with it. in real time that happens, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is, and now he's caught fire.
Hey, have you seen much of Jalen Hurts this year? I know you watch the entire league, and
Yeah.
what do you think of how he's playing?
He's still a guy that's going to hold the ball. He still wants to see guys open. Obviously he does have terrific passing skills. He just he's just not a real um, processor. He's not a real good processor, and that's always going to hurt him. He's going to wait to see guys come open way too much, and he's going to be late with throws. He's got a big arm, so he can do that. But yeah, I think he's limited in that respect. I've never been a big fan of him as a passer just because of that.
Right, right, right. We're talking football here with Mike Martz, architect of the greatest show on turf. Still one of the best winning percentages in Rams football history. Before we move on to Ask Mike and then preview Week 8, let's just highlight a couple of the games. There were some tremendous matchups in Week 7, and one of them was Lions and Vikings. Detroit fell behind 10-0. It was all Minnesota. They had a fake punt that backfired, but boy, David Montgomery even left with a little bit of an ankle tweak, although he returned. But Mike, the Lions just don't blink. They were poised, they regrouped, and they eked out the victory.
I love that about them. I mean, that's why I like them so much. Obviously, Danny has a lot to do with that, but the thing that, from a coaching aspect, when I watch a game, they are so well schooled in everything that they do, the details, and they just, like you said, they just don't blink. They're so confident in their ability to overcome things. They don't try to make something bigger out of the play than it just happens. You know what I mean? Everybody does their job. You got a chance to pop in simple play for an 80-yard touchdown if everybody just do their job. That kind of thing. Defense, they're tackling so much better with the secondary. They look at all the little things that you think you're coaching with your guys. They're doing it all, and they're one of the few teams in the league that are like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that is a dynamic offense. The game winner, Battlehawks fans, you may remember this name, Jake Bates, who came out of the UFL, and I believe it was a season opening game. He hits a 64-yarder to defeat the Battlehawks. Well, he's doing pretty well in the in the NFL now for Detroit. And Mike, just last thing on this game, it's you say for the great teams, the big players have to show up in big games. I know it's still early in the season, but this was a big matchup.
Huge.
And Jamar Gibbs, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amon St. Brown, 112 yards, 1 touchdown. And it kind of opened my eyes last year. You said that Gibbs has some characteristics that remind you of Marshall Faulk.
Very similar, very, very similar. He's the closest to Marshall that I've ever seen.
Wow.
He's a guy that can change gears in a couple of steps. Mm-hmm. I did a breakdown for the 33rd team. I did a piece for them, and you can show him like on a pitch run, and he'll set a speed, and the defender will start at that angle. And as the defender gets there, he gets to another gear. Mm-hmm. Very few backs I've ever seen ever are capable of doing that. He does that, and he's so sudden. And you think he's in top gear, but he's got something left. You know what I mean? And when he hits the hole, he hits it. There's no hopping around. The other thing is he's a violent runner when he needs to be. He's a physical guy.
They do run him inside. There's no doubt about that.
Like I said, he is the closest thing to Marshall that I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like I said, that is high praise. Packers and Texans, another good interconference matchup. Packers come away with the win, but it took a last-second field goal for them to beat the Texans. The Texans were missing, I think, like 5 defensive starters out via injury, or in the case of one player, it was a suspension. But boy, watching the game, Mike, CJ Stroud, he had absolutely no time. I mean, it seemed every play he was running for his life.
Yeah, and it's a shame. He's, like I said, he's probably my favorite quarterback in the league in terms of his ability, what he can see and do. And it's going to happen. It's just you're going to have those days. And that's why you got to carry these different protections in there where you can block 7 or 8 guys,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not popular in the league today. But back in the day, we always would hit pocket where you could put 2 receivers to one side and block everybody and let them run a combination over there. At least you're going to block them and throw it.
Yeah, yeah, and Jordan Love, another quarterback that you really like now. He's thrown a few interceptions, and he threw 2 this game, but it's 5 straight games with at least 1 INT. But he also knows how to find the end zone. A couple touchdown passes. I think this is 9 straight games with at least 2 touchdown passes.
Well, you got to give. I mean, Houston obviously is a top 10 defense too. They're really good on defense, even with some guys out. So, I mean, that's going to happen against a good defense.
It seems like I remember we talked right about this time last season about Jordan Love, and you said, they've kind of treated him with kid gloves. Been Matt LaFleur been conservative. They got to let him relax and play the game and kind of take the any restrictions off him. And he's really taken off and used his talent. Now he seems very aggressive, like throwing the ball downfield, taking chances. Is there a fine line between being aggressive, but also, I don't know, being responsible in terms of what you do with the football?
Oh, there's no question, Jim. From being, from being aggressive to being stupid, it's the thickness of a hair. I mean, it just is. Mm-hmm. He has to realize, we used to tell the quarterbacks, all of our names are on that football when you throw it. Just remember that. All of our careers are on that thing. So be judicious when you do this, please. So, I think you can, but you can draw those guys back. What you can't do is make a quarterback aggressive. You can't get them fearless and some of the throws you really would like to have them make. They're going to be late with it. That would happen in Philadelphia, for instance, with, I've always felt like those guys, you can bring them back and talk sense to them and say, okay, here's what you saw. This is what we don't want you to do, blah, 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 and get them going. But you don't want to ever take the shine off of that personality. You want them to be aggressive and feel like they can do anything.
And overall, if you have the weapons, if you have the scheme and the talent as a coach, you can live with a thrown, an interception, right? I mean, every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we won games with 3 or 4 interceptions. You just keep storming the gates. It happens.
Yeah. One more game I want to talk about before we take our first break here on Talking Football. A couple teams we haven't talked a whole lot about this week. I watched the game on the Monday Night Football game too. I guess I know Mike doesn't like the 2 games on Monday night, but it was the Cardinals 17, the Chargers 15. The Chargers have the league's top scoring defense, Mike. They've allowed only 13.8 points per game, but they're just kind of treading water. They're 3-3. I know you love Justin Herbert, but boy, you talk about a team without receiver help. They have so many injuries with their receivers, but yet he's still, they almost won the stage. He still threw for 349 yards in that game.
He's incredible. Obviously when he came out, I don't know if you remember talking about him, but when he came out, I thought he was the best guy in the draft by far. And, he just can do it all. He and CJ Stroud, those 2 guys are, to me, physically the most talented in the league. They were both ridiculous skill, and he has a work ethic. I know the quarterback coach there really well, Shane Day. He worked for me in a couple places, and talking to Shane about him, he's in there before the coaches. He got a place next to the facility so he can be there right away. So he lives right next to the facility, right? So who does
commute, huh?
Yeah, who does that, right? So he stays late, comes in early. He's a gym rat. It's all about football.
What a talented arm too. I know accuracy's big, but boy, some of the throws he makes, there aren't too many people on God's green earth that can make them. It's amazing.
Well, see, that goes back to what we're just saying about Love now too. You wouldn't want to put a damper on a guy like him.
Right.
Now, Jim Harbaugh could do that. And that's, he's very conservative. So
yeah,
there's a clash there, I'm sure, with those two guys. What he's going to let him do and want him to do, and what he's not going to want him to do, right? So,
yeah. No, their first 4 games, I don't think Herbert had even 200 yards passing. Then 2 weeks ago he has 237, and now 349. But I think they kind of had to, because they had rushed the ball really well, or pretty well, this season. They had no rushing game against the Cardinals. Now, on the flip side, Arizona, I don't know what to make of them, Mike. They're 3-4, so they're kind of up and down. Kyler Murray, he had only 145 yards passing in this game, but he did enough to get the win, and he had a 44-yard touchdown run where whoosh, it looked like a video game. He was going so fast.
I love watching him play. He's one of my favorite guys in the league to watch. He's just so exciting. Without Kyler Murray, I don't know if that team wins a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much he means to them. He's that whole football team. The rest of them, they're just guys. They're not a real good team. He makes them click. They're going to win. It's all up to him.
Yeah. Well, that's a look at Week 7, some of the trends in the league. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with Ask Mike.
Mungenast St. Louis Acura has the vehicle you want, like the all-new 2025 MDX. Get the new 2024 RDX with financing as low as 3.9% or lease with no down payment and just $459 a month. Lease the electrified 2024 Acura ZDX for just $589 per month with zero down. We also have over 100 Acura certified pre-owned vehicles in stock. Mungenast St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
We're back on Talking Football. Jim Thomas with Mike Martz. We're on Claves Online. You can find us just about anywhere you find podcasts. On YouTube, you can actually see the beautiful mugs of Mike and I. Or you can just listen to the podcast on Spotify. We appreciate our sponsors and like you to support them if you can. Ask Mike. We have actually 3 questions this week, Mike. The first one comes from Southside Johnny from St. Louis. He said there were a lot of, he said there were a lot of big plays, scoring plays that had nothing to do with the offense on defense and special teams last week. How important is that to a team's victory? Can that mean the difference between winning and losing?
Oh, absolutely it does. Here's what it does to an offense. You feel the pressure offensively, you're to put the points on the board. Then all of a sudden you get points from special teams or defense. It's like a shot in the arm and a relief. It gives you a cushion. It relieves some of that pressure, if you will. It's just I think it's the biggest motivational lift in a football game is to get points off of special teams or defense. No question.
I looked up just last week what Southside Johnny was talking about, and there were 7 plays where a touchdown was scored by the defense or special teams. There were 4 fumble returns, scoop and scores for touchdowns, 1 pick six. There was a punt return for a touchdown. Then the opening of Cincinnati's game against Cleveland, the guy returns kickoff return 100 yards for a touchdown, and let's see, 6-1. So there's 7 touchdowns, non-offense, and the teams that score that went 6-1. So it can really jazz up a team. Now, when you hired Lovie Smith as your coordinator, he was kind of known for takeaways on defense. And that obviously that had to factor into your decision to make him DC, wouldn't you say?
I tell you, yes, it did, and the reason for that was also I know the strip. The tackle and strip technique that they'd coached for many years. I coached with Lovey at Arizona State. And then, obviously I coached against him at Tampa. And just like we do now, you're aware when you prepare for somebody how detail-oriented they are, where you can get them out of position or how you can affect them. And they were very difficult. I just loved what they did defensively and how sound they were. And I knew him, the personality. And I know what they teach about pulling the ball out, Mm-hmm. We did that at Chicago with him. The guys would tackle him. First guy there makes a tackle. Second guy there gets the ball out, and it works remarkably well.
Yeah, we're seeing so many punch outs this year. Now, this is from Bob from St. Louis. Real kind of meat and potatoes question. How can Tampa adjust, or can they salvage the season with both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out with injuries? Now, Godwin's out for the season. Evans has a pretty bad hamstring, it looks like, so he won't be out for the season. But a hamstring, those are tricky, but they usually, if it's severe, you're going to miss a month at least, right, Mike?
Yeah, 6 weeks is against a big one. It's usually 6 weeks, at minimum 4 weeks. The trainers will tell you 3 weeks, but that's bogus. It's going to be 4 weeks anyway. It depends on who the backups are, and I don't know their roster, unfortunately.
Mhm.
If they got a little unknown guy in there that's got talent, it's just a chance for them to step up, right? If they're not, I don't know how strong their roster is. If it's not a strong roster backup wise, then they're in trouble. We're in big trouble.
Yeah. They do, and they started throwing to him after both those. After Evans went out, because Godwin's injury came with less than a minute left. Otten, a tight end Otten, and all of a sudden they started, and he made some nice catches. So obviously your tight end can help, but boy, it's going to be tough for them, isn't it?
It is going to be tough. Like I said, for us, we had a couple of guys that we drafted that were young guys, McDonald, etc., and we felt good about them going into the game in the event of something happened. But I don't know what their backups are like, whether they're starters waiting to happen or they're just backups.
Yeah, we're gonna find out here. Last one from our old friend. We haven't heard from her, I don't think, since the season opener. Marissa from DC. She's off the grid once again this week, Mike. She wants to know, what's your favorite Halloween candy, and do you give out candy on Halloween?
Well, absolutely give out candy, because if you were a kid trick-or-treating, you're going to give it up, right? Yeah, I sit at the door. Yeah, I enjoy seeing the costumes and talking to the kids and all that stuff. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. My favorite as a kid, of course, I grew up in South Dakota, and people made their stuff there. They didn't buy it. So my favorite was always the Rice Krispie bars, or the what do you call the popcorn balls with the
yeah.
So we didn't get candy. We didn't get candy where I grew up. We were kind of a lower middle class area, but everybody made their stuff. Candied apples, that was another one that we used to get. So
yeah,
that was all good stuff. We didn't get very many actual candy bars.
Yeah. So what will you be giving out, or is that up to Julie, your wife, your lovely wife?
Everything's up to Julie, Jim. Everything. So yeah, there'll be a big thing of candy there, and you just take a handful in there. And the thing I love is you take a handful of those little candy, you put it in the bag, and the youngster's still there with the bag open, like, okay, yeah, we want a double dip here. They won't walk away with just one scoop. Give me two. I love that.
And what do you do, Mike? Do you snarl at them, or do you?
Absolutely, 2 scoop them, sure.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you said you picked with your heart last week, and it was a tough week for you.
A tough week, yeah.
So I think we're gonna move on. You lasted as long in the business because of your coaching, motivational abilities, play calling, not in predicting games. But
I can predict him. But last week, like I told you, I was just going to go on the teams that I wanted to see win, and I don't think I was even 500, was I?
You were 2-6.
Yeah, 2-6. There you go. Yeah.
I was 6-2. The two that we both got wrong were I think we both picked the 49ers, and I forget did we both? I think we both picked Atlanta.
We did.
I'm always wrong on Atlanta. It took me a while to join you on Atlanta. Then I go with him, and Cousins, has 3 turnovers. So
yeah.
But sooner or later, it'll get more predictable.
I wanted the Giants, for instance, to win that game because I watched them, Jim. Offensively, they're so well schooled on offense.
Yeah,
he does a great job. He's a terrific football coach, and they're just not. They just can't make anything, and the quarterback just can't make it happen.
Yeah.
And just because I want to see them do well, I picked them.
Well, I am. I said last week I was going to declare a moratorium on prodding you on Daniel Jones, but there are questions. That's one of the, and I'm sure it's not the first time, about whether he should continue at quarterback or not. So We'll move on. After this break, we'll get into week 8. All 16 teams are playing this week. We've had some teams take byes the last 2 weeks, but we'll be right back with Mike and myself's thoughts on week 8 as we approach midseason in the National Football League.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Mike, we're back. Our producer, Jojo Roderick, wants to know that he's a little surprised. So no full-size candy bars at the Martz household?
Well, we get the little guys. That's how I double scoop them, the little guys. No.
Okay.
No, because of the other things, the leftovers, you know what happens to leftovers, right? So if we go,
you get them, right?
Yeah, if we go full-size, then it's going to be a disaster for me.
Yeah, my wife is always early for everything, and she'll buy the bag of Halloween candy like a week ago, and it never makes it to Halloween. So she's got it in it. Yeah, it's going to yours truly. In our last segment, I forgot to mention this. Joe, get ready. I don't know if you have this ready. Maybe he doesn't. Our Mike Martz tight end of the week goes to Mark Andrews. There he is. Goes to Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. They've developed so many weapons. Zach Flowers, even at tight end, Isaiah Likely. They've got this mega running game with Derrick Henry. But Andrews had a big touchdown catch in their win last week over Tampa Bay. A veteran. He's still a valuable player, isn't he, Mike?
He is, and they haven't used him much, which is surprising.
Yeah.
Because he's such a talent, and they always talk about using him, but they don't. To scratch the surface, particularly in the red zone, and they've struggled down there at times in the red zone. So that tight end and the runner in the red zone, they should be able to get that ball in just about every time.
Yeah, you'd think. Okay, week 8. Again, no buys, all 16 teams, no London game, overseas game. They played 3, I think. Munich. I think they're a game in Germany in November, but no early games, only one Monday night game. Let's start out with tonight's game, the Thursday night game, the 5-1 Vikings against the 2-4 Rams. Cooper Kupp, we think, will be available for this game. And Mike, there are trade rumors involving Kupp. So he could be auditioning for teams tonight.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be a good choice for Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah,
that's what they've got to do, something like that. I think the Vikings will get back on track, and this is a pretty easy one. I don't think LA, after losing that game, the Vikings will be in full force. I don't think they can handle that defense.
Yeah, it's one of the league's top pass rushers. Mike, I don't know if there's a phrase for the style of defense, but you know what they do? They'll put 6-7 guys on the line, and sometimes they'll blitz, sometimes they'll drop off with those guys. And I would think as an offensive lineman, maybe even a quarterback, you're not always sure where the pass rush is coming.
No, you don't. I mean, but you can tell sometimes from the alignment of the back safeties. And one of the things that we should do with that is the first thing you have to do is run the ball on first sound. So we come up and snap the ball, and they start to move out of things, and you're running right at them. Mm-hmm. I think when we played, the last time we played him in St. Louis, our first series, we ran 10 plays, and all 10 of them were runs, and the last one was a touchdown. Mm-hmm. It was against that Jimmy Johnson defense, which is what this is.
Okay.
Jimmy Johnson defense. And you just have to run at it. You have to run at it. I don't think that LA is good enough to do that.
Yeah, and Kyron Williams is a pretty good back, but yeah, I don't know if he can necessarily, as a type of back that can. He's from St. Louis. If he can necessarily dominate a game, he's definitely very good in the red zone. Do Do you see more teams using that style of defensive front? It seems like it to me. Maybe I'm
It's always been like that, Jim. I think the really good pressure, like Jimmy Johnson, for instance, that his heyday at Philadelphia, there was a few years there. People go back 10 years and they don't go back any further, but all this stuff was cyclical. When we were rolling, we saw a lot of that, a lot of that.
Mhm.
You get out, you do. One of the reasons we did what we did, we formation the heck out of everybody, and they got to try and get lined up against that. They can't. When you line up in a set on offense and you don't move anybody, then they
Right.
can do all that. But when you start shifting the tight end and moving backs and
Mhm.
doing all those things, they got to get lined up, and that tells
Yeah.
you what they're going to do then.
Yeah, obviously can tell you if they're in man or zone.
Oh,
I seem to recall you in your day, everybody's talking about this cover 2 and the shell defenses. You saw a lot of that because they wanted to try to keep your explosive receivers in front of them. So it's like there's really nothing new in the world of football. It's all happened at one time or another.
Yeah, and the cover 2 is easy for us because there's a big hole in the middle of the field, cover 2.
Mhm.
Unless that linebacker is like a DB, that's where we made all of our money is there's a spot, and I won't get real technical, but from the numbers to 4 yards inside the numbers,
Mhm.
at about 15 to 20 yards deep, there's a window there that they just can't cover. And that's where we threw the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of haves versus have-nots games this week. Maybe there's some big matchups, but not like we had in week 7. But
Right.
we have the Ravens. This is a early game Sunday. The Ravens 4-2 at the Browns 1-6. The Ravens are 9-point favorites, which are a big number in pro football. AFC North matchup. This game always is interesting to me because it's the team that left Cleveland versus the new version of the Browns. The Ravens are number 1 in total offense, 461 yards a game, which is very greatest show like. Derrick Henry, a league high, 873 yards rushing. We mentioned Jameis Winston starting at quarterback for the Browns. So not much to think about in this game in terms of your pick, is there, Mike?
No brainer. Yeah, that's a no brainer. The 406 people have to understand 460 yards a game. If you're at 350 or 360, you're a good offense.
That's considered a good day, huh?
Oh my God.
350,
That's just, you're a different zone than everybody else. The way they're playing, the way the quarterback was playing, the throws he made, and then Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And defensively, like I said, they were asleep on defense the first part of the season. I don't know what was going on. But they've come alive now. So that team right now, the way they played this last week, if they can keep that going, that's the team to beat, man. They're really good.
That's what I'm glad you brought up Jackson's passing because that really, and I think they had 508 yards in that game. That's what really stood out to me in that game. Now I've seen him play obviously several times, but he's a pretty good pocket passer, man. He can twirl that thing.
And they've gone out of their way in the last 2 years to make sure that they keep him in the pocket, to forget about running. We know where your passing skills. You go ahead and turn it loose. Run if you get flushed like everybody else, but don't one and done it like they used to tell him to do, And there's a story about him. He got frustrated with the coaches. He said, "No, I'm a good passer. Leave me in the pocket. I can do this."
Yeah.
He did.
And they are so good, and they're so multifaceted. We mentioned Jay Flowers, how he's really becoming kind of number 1 receiver, but they have so many weapons. It reminds me of The Greatest Show. There'd be some games where maybe Marshall Faulk didn't do a lot, or maybe Isaac Bruce didn't have the flashiest numbers, but a Ricky Prohl or Naz Hakeem or whoever would pop up. Derrick Henry, they kept showing him because I think through 3 quarters, he had only 4 carries in the game for like 23 yards. I guess they saw something in the passing game where they, and also, what's their third down back, Justice Hall, is it? Hill. They were using him a lot. So I think their offense is so varied. As big of a weapon as Henry is, they can get by without him at times.
Well, they game plan wise, they looked at him and said, "This is the matchup that we need to take advantage of." But we went up to play Detroit and they had this great defensive front. They were number 1 in the league against the rush.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have many sacks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Monday night game, and we beat them 35-0. After the game, I was being interviewed, and they said, "You threw 17 straight passes." Mm-hmm. No, I wasn't aware of that, but the whole point was we came out and tried to run the ball a little bit, but they're so good up front. Luther Ellis was there then, all those guys, but they're not really good pass rushers. So what makes more sense then, right? And I think that's what happens here with Baltimore. All of a sudden they get going, they got a pretty good lead, then they turn around and hand him the ball and he goes 80 with it or whatever he did.
Yeah, and he did kind of like you did. You'd go into I guess you call it the 4-minute drill when you had a lead and just pound the ball. And he got his 100. He ended up with over 100 yards. He had a long run in that game. So okay, so Ravens. We both like the Ravens over the Browns. Let's move on to some. The Vikings, by the way, that the Rams game tonight, they're just 3-point favorites. Okay, big NFC South, kind of a mid-season matchup. Falcons at Buccaneers. Both are coming off losses. Both teams are 4-3. So this is a game that'll give the winner the lead in the South. Obviously, a big game for the Bucs without the two receivers. They played just 3 weeks ago, Mike. It was the best Thursday night game of the season. I'm sure you recall it. That was Cousins threw for 509 yards. 509 yards, which is a lot. Of course, I remember, you and I are working on this book, your life story, and I was writing the chapter on your time at Arizona State, and you played a Houston Cougars team in Tokyo. David Klingler threw for 716 yards against your Arizona State Sun Devils. So that's a lot of yards.
But we threw for 600.
Well, yeah, you scored 45 points. And Klingler, after the game, said the reason why we kept throwing and kept having to score is because they kept scoring. It was a pretty close game. But anyway, 509 yards, just a massive amount for the NFL, including the OT winner. He had 4 TDs in that game, 36-30 overtime win. It seems obvious, but don't you have to like the Falcons just because the Buccaneers are so
yeah, just based on what did a few weeks ago and the fact that those two receivers, until they can fix that and know how they're going to resolve that, it puts so much pressure on the running game and on the defense. I just think the Falcons win this game. Yeah.
And Tampa's running game is better this year, wouldn't you say? But I don't know if it's strong enough to carry a game, is it?
No, yeah, much better. But yeah, like you said, if they're behind, you're going to have to play catch up, and you're not going to do that running the ball.
Now, the games at Raymond James, strangely, and these were, I always use odds on ESPN. This was early in the week, maybe before they knew the extent of the injuries to Godwin. I don't know why they wouldn't, but strangely, the Buccaneers are 2-point favorites. But yeah, you got to like the Falcons here. Okay, we have another division matchup. The 4-3 Colts at the 5-2 Texans. AFC South, a big game for the pecking order in the division. Texans are 6-point favorites. This is another rematch of an earlier game. The Texans won 29-27 at Indy on opening day. Stephon Diggs had 2 touchdown catches. Joe Mixon had 159 yards rushing. They were obviously both the big trade pickoffs in the offseason. Now, for the Colts, Anthony Richardson returned last week against Miami, was unimpressive, 10 out of 24, just 129 yards. He missed nearly 3 games with an injured hip. How do you think this one shapes up?
I just think Houston's just a much better team. I do. Now that they got Mixon and they're going better, they're trying to figure out how they're going to do with him, what they're going to do with him in the running game. They got that satisfied. They're just a really good team. This game is always records don't matter, in this game. It's one of those type of rivalries. But I'd go with Houston for sure. You don't know who's going to show up at Indianapolis. It's the most frustrating team in the league right now to me. You don't know from week to week how they're going to play.
Yeah. And I like the Texans here too. The Colts have been pretty unimpressive to me this year. They've had some moxie. They've managed to eke out some wins, but the Texans, D'Amico Ryans just bluntly said, we're getting back to their pass protection. he says, we've got a right tackle problem. They've rotated like 3 different right tackles in there. I'm sure it's not just that position, but we talked about this a little bit in the opening segment. Can you just go to quicker passes, maybe throw some screens, some flats to kind of help CJ Stroud out a little bit?
Well, play action is always an answer, and then keeping the tight end there to help. That was our answer. We always just kept the tight end in, and you just one less receiver, but that's all right. I mean, there's still enough that you can do in the passing game, but on the early downs, you just rely on play action that slows them down. And you chip. The other thing is that I learned early on from Ernie Zampese is the tight end, when he lines up on the right side with that tackle, he's going to take a shot at that defensive end and then release into route.
Just chip and go, huh?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't just – I mean, what you do is you come off and you blast him right down the middle and just stun him and then release into your route, and then the tackle sets, and then he should be able to handle that from there.
And the way they run, especially with Mixon back, you'd think play action would be effective. Okay, now those were early games. Let's go to 3:05 p.m. game on Fox. A big interconference matchup. The Bills 5-2 at the Seahawks 4-3. The Bills are 3-point favorites. Wide receiver, a lot of wide receiver injuries. We talked about some of the quarterback injuries, but DK Metcalf, who seems like he's been there forever, Mike, but he's week to week with a sprained MCL, big target, big play threat. And the Seahawks have thrown the ball a lot. They're one of the most pass-happy teams in the league this year. For Buffalo, Josh Allen, I know if you're not president of the Josh Allen fan club, you're on the board of directors. 189 attempts this year, Mike. No interceptions, none. And Allen kind of has been known as a guy in the past that will throw some candy out there, some INT. So he's got 15 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. How do you explain his lack of turnovers?
Maturity and coaching. They've done a great job with their game plans. We're getting guys clean for him, and they've harped on him. The thought of, the indecision, pull it down, that kind of thing, check it down, throw it away. You don't have to make those big throws all the time, he processes a little bit differently now than he used to. It's never been the fact that he can't do it quickly. He's always been able to do that. He's that wild horse rider kind of guy. Yeah, I can make that throw. You got to back him off of that,
And they'll have a full week of practice to work Amari Cooper in there. Of course, his first target, he catches a touchdown pass. But how quickly can you get a receiver ready?
Oh, he's ready. They'll get him ready in a week. Mm-hmm. There's enough for him. He's not going to play every snap, so he'll know enough of it. He'll be ready to go.
And do you open up the whole playbook, or do you go to him and say, okay, what routes do you like, Amari?
No, you don't ask. You never ask a player what you like. That's stuff that I hear people say. It makes me want to vomit. Now here's what we're going to use. Here's what you're going to do. Learn it, and we'll go.
Well, by all means, Mike, do not vomit on talking football here. Okay, we always talk about the Chiefs. This is another late game, 3:25 on CBS. The Chiefs 6-0 at the Raiders 2-5. AFC West. This is over the years has been one of the games, great rivalries. But we've talked for weeks. I loved your phrase early in the season. You said, "Hey, sooner or later that rubber band's going to break." The Chiefs are just kind of somehow they're winning games that maybe they shouldn't. I don't think this is the week the rubber band breaks for Kansas City.
No, in fact, they might have picked a couple of rubber bands up on this one. They've got the Chiefs will win this one easily, I think.
Yeah. The talk, I don't, as we sit here now, I don't think it's finalized, but looks like the Chiefs are in the midst of finalizing a trade to get DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans. He should add something to that attack, shouldn't he?
No, of course he should. Yeah, absolutely. They need that. That's what's missing for them. They need more than that too. But yeah, they're under strength for sure.
Yeah. They are 10-point favorites. Rare do you see a double-digit spread in the NFL this year. Another late game to me. It should have been a great number 1 versus number 2 overall pick matchup. The Bears coming off a bye week, 4-2. at the Washington Commanders, 5-2, but it looks like we're not going to see Daniels. Marcus Mariota did a pretty good job stepping in for Daniels, but can he do it over a couple of weeks if need be?
I think he can. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of his. It's just like Sam up at the Vikings. It's being in the right place. He's went through a couple clubs that weren't very good, and sounds like he's found a place that likes him and trusts him, and he's comfortable with it. I'm sure he can play very well. I just think that right now, the way the Bears are coming off a bye week, and the way Caleb is playing, and the way that defense is playing, I just think the Bears win this one.
Yeah, I agree. The Bears are just 3-point favorites. They Caleb Williams is getting better every week. The Bears are getting some a run game going now. Their defense has been good all year. They're kind of a team to me to keep an eye on. Okay, the Sunday night game, the Cowboys, they were the other team that had the bye. There were only two bye teams, the Bears and Cowboys in week 7. And the 49ers without Brandon Ayuk, he's on IR. The Cowboys, they're 3-0 on the road, and this game is in Santa Clara. They're 0-3 at home. The 49ers, despite all their injuries, they're -5.5. This is a tough one to read, Mike. I know the 49ers have the injuries, but I think Purdy will he'll come back. I agree with you. He's, I don't think last week's game was any kind of norm or any kind of warning sign for him. I think he'll come back. The Cowboys, though, they should be pretty desperate, at 3-3.
The problem with the Cowboys is I don't know if they're good enough. Even with the 49ers banged up, the routes, it looks like the receiver decided he didn't want to play anymore. They jog through routes. They don't run full speed. They have no running game. They can't protect Dak Prescott. Defensively, they're light in the rear end. They're built to rush the passer. They're a mess.
Yeah.
They're just a mess. And I'd like to say, well, it was an emotional thing and they'll get together. I don't think they can.
Yeah.
Who's going to run the ball?
Yeah.
You have Moses back there carrying the ball for crying out loud,
Would that be Zeke Elliott? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, come on. And the offensive line's okay, They can't run the ball, and the receivers don't want to play.
Yeah.
They play like they don't want to play.
So interesting, Mike, your comments about the receiving core and the sloppy and the route run. I don't know if you heard Troy Aikman's comments. He said almost the exact same thing you're saying about the receiver core.
But that's not new. That's been like that for 3 or 4 years. Watching them run routes, it just makes you cringe. I mean, come on. And the quarterback's holding the ball back there, and you're jogging through a route because you don't think the ball's coming to you.
Yeah.
I see that happen all the time, man. Yeah, you can't. When guys are like that, they just don't compete. They just not compete.
And that, knowing you from your time coaching the Greatest Show, that there are a few things that drives you more nuts than to see a receiver that doesn't run a precise route. You're a strict stickler for that. I remember the sign in the wide receiver room you had there. What was it? Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
And don't fool the quarterback.
Yeah.
The last part, no question. But the thing is, that's just a lack of effort. You can account for just about everything. A guy drops a pass or makes a mistake, you fix it. You don't get excited. But you get a guy that's not going full speed or playing hard. Yeah, I just lose my mind over that stuff.
So you're going with the Niners? That's my guess here.
I mean, I want if this was last week betting on who I want to win, I'd say, the Cowboys. But realistically, I think the 49ers beat them.
You talked me out of it. I was going to go Cowboys, but I'm going to go Niners now. Okay, our last game of the week, Monday Night Football. The New York Football Giants 2-5 at the Steelers 5-2. Steelers are rolling. 6.5-point favorites. We always talk and make picks on the primetime games or the bigger games of the week, but since this is primetime, it's a have versus have not game. But I wanted to ask you about this game because I wanted to get your thoughts on Russell Wilson, who returned replace Justin Fields, and he was pretty good in that game, wasn't
He's a little dusty at the beginning, then he really got going. He's going to be fun. Here's the thing about Mike Tomlin's probably the best head coach in the league right now. Mm-hmm. You look at what he's done with that team, all the problems they've been through in the last year and this year too, not having a quarterback, doing this, and they just don't look good. They don't look like they got a lot of talent, but they just win. They just figure out that's coaching, buddy. Mm-hmm. I mean, he does the best job of making the good decisions, staying on about this, that, and the other thing, the discipline, toughness. They win games they shouldn't really win.
Yeah.
And that's they win this one.
Yeah, Wilson in that win over the Jets, he like you said, he struggled early. Here he is, he's returning. He's had a great career, played in 2 Super Bowls, won 1. He was getting booed in the early series, and the Steelers fans, they don't boo very often. That's not kind of in their DNA, but he got it together, even had a rushing touchdown. He could still move around a little bit. Wilson had missed the first 6 games with a calf injury. Talking about Tomlin, Mike, he was asked at his post-game presser that's kind of a risky, wasn't it a risky, because Fields hadn't been terrible, maybe not great, but they're 4-2 with Fields, and he wanted to make the change. He said, boy, isn't that risky going to Fields? And Tomlin response was, that's why I'm well compensated.
I love it. I didn't know
make
that.
Decisions like that.
I love it. What he's telling him is Fields is only going to be just so good. There's a cap on how good he can be. Mm-hmm. And we know that, and we got to get the other guy ready.
And don't you, if you're him, because when you're coaching in Pittsburgh, just making the playoffs, that's fine and good, but the bar is set higher there. Don't you have to, if you're Tomlin, don't you have to find out about Wilson?
Oh, no question. In other words, he's found out enough about Fields. That's what he's found enough to know that he's not going to get any better than be just okay. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to win, we got to go here. So, obviously. And I think the fact that they did what they did and they left him in there and hung in there with him, that revitalized Russell Wilson too.
Steelers in this one, Michael?
Big.
Yeah. So I'll go Steelers too. So we all agree on all the games. We'll see how that works. No variances of opinion. Mike, anything else you want to bring up? Do you ask the trick-or-treaters for a trick? Do they have to tell you a joke, or do you just hand out the candy?
No. I just wave at mom and dad on the sidewalk and dump as much candy in there as they want.
There you go. That's Mike Martz. I'm Jim Thomas. This is Talking Football. Please give us a listen on Claves Online. We'll talk to you next week.
Let me get this straight. Graybar is a distributor?
Yep. For more than 150 years, we supported electrical and datacom projects all over the country.
So you can get me products wherever and whenever I need them?
Yep. Thanks to our expansive national logistics network.
For any industry?
Yep. From construction sites and industrial plants to schools, hospitals, and just about everything in between.
So you could say Graybar is much more than a distributor?
Yep, you could say that.
They really do it all.
Yep. When you need a hand powering, connecting, or maintaining your operations, join the thousands of professionals who rely on Graybar to help keep them up and running. Yep, Graybar does that.